Barry. So that's actually now going out to YouTube as we speak. So.
And that also picks up our chatter during the break. So, no Nixon 17-minute thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we're at showtime. Are you ready for your accounting?
Let's go.
Oh, let's do it.
Have a great show. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business and the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ron Baker, along with my good friend and Threshold colleague, Ed Kless. On today's show, folks, we're talking the power of differentiation with Barry LaBov. Hey, Ed, how's it going?
It's great, Ron. It's the longest day of the year. Longest day of the year. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Most sunlight. Yep. So there you go.
But it's still the shortest hour when we do these shows. So, but especially with our guest Barry LaBov, let me just read a little bit of his bio. He's the founder and CEO of LaBov Marketing, Communications, and Training. He's a 2-time Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year and inductee into the Entrepreneur of the Year Hall of Fame. And he's also the author of a great book, The Power of Differentiation. He and his wife, Carol, had their own charitable foundation that contributes to worthy causes every year. Barry, welcome to the Soul of Enterprise.
Ron, I'm a big fan. You were on my podcast and you hit it out of the park, so it's an honor. And Ed, it's great to be with you. I've listened to your show for years, so it's a big deal for me to be on. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So let's start with the obvious. How does fronting a 1980s rock band called Mark Urgent prepare someone to lead a brand transformation agency? I mean, was it the hair, the hustle, or the heartbreak?
Well, first of all, I want to share that my music sold well under 1 million copies. So I just want to let you guys know that. Okay.
Okay.
Running a rock band is the way I run my business, and there's good and bad to it. It's not a perfect way to run. When you have a rock band, you have the drummer that doesn't want to be responsible to count the songs off. You have the guitarist who can't keep a beat, but he's a great lead guitarist. You have the singer who wants to sing high, but he loses his voice after the third song. And you got to hold that thing together. And you got to make sure each of them knows that what he or she is doing is really important. And that's how I've run my company. So I'm an imperfect person. I got imperfect people. And what I try to do is, and it's differentiation, I look at what do they do that's great. And my goal is to keep them in that part of the song or the arrangement, if you want to say that, where they're going to do great and not worry about trying to turn them into something they're not. So that's how I do it.
Wow. That's awesome. Let me share something with you. One of our pricing mentors is a guy named Bob Cross, and he's a very interesting story. He was a lawyer at Delta Airlines, and they shoved him into the whole revenue management area when that was booming after the airlines were deregulated. And he went on to, convert Delta to revenue management, and then he started his own software company, which did pricing, dynamic pricing, basically. And then he sold it, and he basically retired after that. Here's the thing. He's got an interesting theory about professional pricers that I think applies to what you do as well. He says the best pricers are musicians. Mm-hmm. And you say, in music, the perfect doesn't exist.
All right.
So how does embracing imperfection actually help brands stand out?
Well, here's how it helps. Most of our friends in big corporations really feel pressure to make sure everything they do is right, it's proper, it's perfect. And what they do is they wait and they wait and they wait and they're waiting, and then they finally launch whatever they're going to do. But by then, everything's changed. The world's different. In music, I'll share this. Ed, you're a musician. I think you're going to go, yeah, I get this. So many of our favorite songs, Ron, were made originally from a mistake. That guitarist or keyboardist is playing and their fingers go to the wrong spot and they go, ooh, what was that? That's cool. And one of their jobs is to go back and say, wait a minute, what did I do there? That's how most of our favorite songs were created. So I look at imperfection as a part of the creative process.
I love that. Wow. I remember hearing Yo-Yo Moss was asked if does he strive for perfection? He said, no. He said, if there's not a flaw in there, I'm not being human. I'm not being authentic. Thought that was brilliant. So I love this in your book, Barry. You describe the commodity monster as a daily adversary. How do you defeat the commodity monster?
Well, so many of us in your field, my field, and then of course in manufacturing and other businesses are being pressured to look like, feel like, sound like, and price like everybody else. And that is that slippery slope that we all talk about where you go downhill. The commodity monster wants us to diminish what we do, to smooth out those little harsh edges of some of the things we create that are kind of quirky, kind of unique, and they want us to get rid of them. And I'll tell you, I think this is every bit as important as being more profitable in your company. Here's where this is so important, Ron. When you do that, yes, of course, you're giving in to the commodity monster. It eats you alive. You no longer can charge what you want to charge. You're not unique. But here's where it absolutely flabbergasts me. This is where you lose the hearts and the minds and the souls of your employees, because no longer are they working at that place that did some really cool stuff. You know, your faded glory. They're going, we used to be good, but I don't even know what we do anymore. And everybody think about this. How many of us either go through this ourselves or have clients that do? Clients that I talk to say, I don't have good retention at my factory. I don't have good quality at my factory. People are leaving left and right. It's hard to hire. And we go, but if you have no uniqueness, no differentiation that gives significance to your people, why should they care? Why should they stay? So defeat the commodity monster by really trumpeting what makes you unique and let your employees know the role they play.
And I love in the book, you have several case studies where you describe companies that when you look from the outside look pretty banal, selling copper or whatever, but you can go in and find that gem, can't you?
Yeah. What's so amazing is I do not create the differentiation for our clients. I discover it.
You discover it.
It's right there in front of them. It's amazing. And the copper company you talked about had a product that they got from reclaimed copper, in cell phones and other things. The nickname the industry gave them was the, quote, cheap copper guys, end quote. That was their nickname. They were losing money. They had poor market share. They were unprofitable. And we looked at it and we said, you're the only copper process that is sustainable in the entire industry. Okay, so we changed their name to Copper Works, where Copper Works is their slogan. Lots of pride, and they are now the premium product and the leader in the industry.
I love that. Yeah, and you have a great video that kind of shows that. It's a great story. The other thing you wrote, Barry, is you say desperate brands make desperate decisions. What are some of the telltale signs of a desperate brand?
Desperate brands are the ones where they're going, okay, you know what? Our competitor promises this and that. We've got to do that. I don't care what we need to do, but we got to do that. Desperate brands will reduce the value of the employees that are working there by letting them know, look, we're not going to give you information. Just keep your head down, keep working, and we're going to just shove stuff out the door. And we're trying to hit numbers. So we're pushing it out the door. And what happens is all this cascades, this desperation to hit a number. It cascades. And one of my clients, it was pretty funny. One of my clients was pushing material and product out the door. They hit their monthly numbers. And their dealers talked to me. And the dealers were cracking up. They thought it was hilarious. And I said, why? They're sending you product that's completely in a terrible situation. And they said, yeah, Barry, but you don't understand. We fix every one of those problems. I said, I know it's got to be really rough for you. They go, Barry, you don't understand. We're charging the company to fix the product they're sending us. It's a cottage industry for us. So those types of desperate decisions, in the moment might appear to be okay. Let's shove it out the door. But in the long run, they blow up your company.
Yeah, it's a hidden cost. You talk about differentiating the copper company, say, but you even work with particular products. Can you tell the Passat story with the missing glove box? I love this.
Yeah, the Passat, produced by Volkswagen, was coming to America. Our client invited us into headquarters in Detroit at the time, was their headquarters. And he said, okay, I want you to look at this brand new car. It's in a secret area of the company in the basement. Tell us what's wrong with it. So we looked all over the car and we noticed that there was no glove compartment or glove box. And he said, bingo. And I said, why did you do this? And he said, well, we didn't mean to. The engineers in Wolfsburg, Germany, decided to really do a great job reinforcing the safety of the car, especially in the passenger compartment up front. So they put roll bars and lots of protective materials in there and have right now 30,000 of them being shipped to America. The problem is they didn't realize that as they put all that extra reinforcement in, they removed the glove compartment, the glove box. So he said, how in the world are you going to sell a $30,000 car that has no glove box? And what we did was we turned it into a differentiator. First of all, we did not deny that it was missing a glove box, but there was only one other car on the market without a glove box, and it was a Mercedes. It was $250,000. And we said, look, the reason this car has no glove box is because it has the most reinforcement, therefore the safest car in the industry. And that's why it was done by these very fanatical, very determined German engineers. And it turned things around. People went, okay, I get it. So it went from being, a mole to being a beauty mark. It was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Now, the full story is the very next year, there was a glove box in that car because those brilliant engineers found a way to put one in.
Right. Oh, I love that. You say brands are not created, but discovered. Mm-hmm. I think there's some truth to that with strategy too. Over time, you kind of lose track of your strategy, what it really is. But explain that brands are not created, but discovered.
So often we're so close to what we produce that we think it's no big deal. I talked to a 125-year-old rail car company one day. I was talking to their top leaders, and I said, well, tell me about your company. And the salesperson said, we're not special. We don't do anything very good, and we're probably overpriced. The engineer said, we're like everybody else, nothing special. The manufacturing guy said, we really have too many flaws in our product. The president of the company turned to me and said, what are you hearing? And I said, I'm hearing that not one of you would buy your own product. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing. And I said, folks, you've been in business 125 years. You must be doing something right. And that's what I really mean when I say we have to discover it. There's something right in front of you that you're doing that is the reason that somebody works with you. Somebody buys your product. And we have to discover that. And I'll tell you one big reason, Ed and Ron, why you have to discover it. Because if you don't discover it, you might just get rid of that one unique thing. That's right. The danger of being an entrepreneur. Hey, I'll change anything to get more money to grow. And it's the story where they go, they used to be great, but they stopped doing blank. They're no good anymore.
Yeah. It's hard to see the label when you're inside the can, isn't it? Barry, you remind me of Theodore Levitt, the guy who said that anything can be differentiated. So I'm loving this. Unfortunately, we're up against our first break. Folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And do check out our Patreon channel where you can get access to our bonus content. That's at patreon.com/TSOE. And now a word from our sponsors.
All clear? Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Great stuff, Barry.
Oh, it's fun.
So Barry, I was listening to one of my favorite things at night is to just surf YouTube now. I don't surf TV, I surf YouTube.
Yeah.
And I came across a video last night that talked about the Fleetwood Mac song "The Chain."
Yes.
And that, Immortal, the bass in the end that comes in is at the end of the song, that whole outro that lasts like a minute and a half.
Right.
It was actually a discarded piece from another Christy McVeigh song.
Right.
They're like, so they wrote the entire beginning part of the chain just to get to the outro.
Right. Right. And that song was one of the few that they worked together on as a band, Ed. Like you said, it was actually a bunch of scraps thrown together.
Yeah.
And I believe Lindsey Buckingham was irritated at first when they said, let's put this together. Because he said, no, I got this song. And I think Stevie said, yeah, but it's not that good of a song. It needs more.
Yeah, no, it's the only Fleetwood Mac song that is credited to all 5 of them.
Yep.
And one of the few songs that in the 20th century has over 1 billion listens.
Right, right. Well, and I met and hung out with Mick Fleetwood a few years ago, and he's a character, but he's the kind of guy that would bring you together to do those things.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, Jordan, I think we're ready.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back on the Soul of Enterprise. The book is The Power of Differentiation by Barry LaBov. And Barry, I wanted to, first of all, thank you for writing a book that confirmed all my priors. Really, but at the same time had some really interesting stories and challenges for me to even think about. And, one of those I want to ask you. We hear a friend of ours, Tim Williams, sure. Is always talking about how full service means absolutely nothing.
Yes.
Right. So what do you do to differentiate your own firm in an industry where everybody claims to do it all? Right.
Yeah. Well, one thing we let it be known is that we focus on one word, which is differentiation. It's 6 syllables, 15 letters. Some people cannot pronounce it, but we focus on that. So number one, that's what we do. The other thing we really, really stress internally is that we have to choose what words that we decide explain who we are. So one thing I think is interesting is words create worlds, okay? So there are 200,000 words in the English language, and how do most people describe their business? Quality, service, value, selection, and price. Okay, you know what? We've got to do better. And how often do we denigrate what we do? And this is another thing I work with clients because they'll go, well, we're just a local. Well, I don't want to be a justa or a local. Well, we're pretty much a full service. Okay, what's a full service? Everybody says they're a full service. So I look for words that have meanings. I don't like core values where it's integrity, honesty, whatever. Everybody says that. One of my company's core values is jamming, like a jam session. Jamming. So who else has that as a core value? I don't know of anybody. Another one is rigor. I know a couple companies that have rigor. So I think it's the words we choose. And I also think in separating who we are, Ed, we need to be able to describe us in a way that a lot of companies will reject it and go, no, I'm not interested. Because you want that smaller group of potential customers going, okay, I love it, tell me more. So that's what I think. I think you choose your words so carefully because if you don't, you're like everybody else. And again, that's where the commodity monster gobbles you up.
Yeah, Ron and I are working a lot right now with accounting firms who are getting into what's called the CAS market space. And then the big challenge for them is, what does their A stand for? Is it stand for accounting or advisory? And the way that we describe it, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on this, is if you're doing accounting, like bookkeeping, that kind of stuff, you're McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with being McDonald's. But if you really want to do advisory work, you've got to be Morton's, and you can't be McDonald's and Morton's in the same firm. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, so often the accounting firm gives away all their best stuff, right? All their insights so that you filed tax returns with them. Well, the problem is everybody files tax returns with accountant firms, and it's not a big deal. And what happens is if we don't stand out, say, wait a minute, we do this and nobody else does it like we do, what's going to happen is you're going to be compared on how well you're filing tax returns as opposed to how you saved me on my one big business acquisition or things like that. And I work with a really great tax accounting firm, and I talk to them on it, and they're very, very close friends of mine, and they have the same situation you just said, Ed, and that is they sell the stuff that's not important and they give away the stuff that's priceless.
Mm-hmm. And well, Ron, we go back on history, and that's because the stuff that's not important is the stuff that takes the quote most hours to do right now.
Right.
Until, of course, we now get into AI, which is what I wanted to talk with you about a little bit about now. Yeah. I've seen no less than 3 stories come across my desk in the past week or so that says advertising is dead. What are your thoughts on that? Or is going to die?
I don't think it's going to die. I think AI is really great, properly used, to get, and I'm not going to be negative here. I really mean this, and I don't think it's a terrible statement. If you want to get mediocre work incredibly fast, that's AI. And by the way, a lot of agencies do mediocre work and they take a long time. So the first thing I would say on AI is I use AI and I think it has great upside to it. But AI is something that's supposed to serve us. It's supposed to give us ideas, and then we can then go deeper with AI, back and forth. And then we have to do something that a lot of people don't do, Ed, and that is we have to have a conscience. And we have to say, okay, I hear this. Is that the voice I would use? Are those the words I would use? I'm talking about from a creative standpoint. So I believe AI will dramatically alter some of the lower hanging fruit at agencies, things that are like media buying, or again, like I said, some very mediocre levels of creativity. And the agencies that collapse from that, candidly, are the ones that deserve to.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think about is AI is better than most things than I am. It's better at most things.
Yeah.
Not all, but most things it is better. Right. And the question then becomes is how can I use that power to be when I want to write an email, and instead of spending 15 minutes drafting and perfecting the email, have it get started for me.
Right.
All right. And I use it every day. And one of the things that I found is always ask it for 2 or 3 variations from the get-go. Right. And I jam those together, just like a song, right?
Oh yeah, and that's what I do as well. I challenge it. I make it go deeper. I push it back until I get something I like. And sometimes it comes out with something I go, wow, that's really good. Then I want to go down that direction. But I'll tell you, I know a lot of people that go to AI and whatever it spits out, that's it. And what I just don't want to look at any more LinkedIn posts or get any more emails where it's AI. Mm-hmm. Greetings, kind sir, about something. Okay, that nobody's talking like that.
Yeah. We will, and we'll probably publish it for this. We published an AI summary of this show on LinkedIn. We'll feed the transcript in. We'll say, quote from Barry, create a story. And we will say, this is the too long, didn't want to listen version. So if you want to get the highlights, here it is. Right. So, but then we also have the human being, Greg, who's live tweeting the show because we think that that's important as well.
Right. And I think we have to realize that there always will be technology. There has been technology for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years that has dramatically altered civilization. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, as soon as we were able to have printed Bibles hundreds of years ago, that changed everything. So if that changed everything, AI is going to do the same. But I do believe that the very aware company that is truly bringing something of value will not only survive, but its potential, they could thrive.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit now, and I'm going to take you back to a question that I was asked 20 years ago during a session that I was delivering. And I asked this question not to make fun of this person who asked it, but to get your reaction to it and why you think this kind of thinking is so prevalent. This was, hand to God, the exact question. Ed, can you give me an example of what other partners in this one area are doing to differentiate themselves.
We lost Ed.
We got, I hear you.
Okay.
I'm back. I'm back.
He's back. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So the question?
The question, this is the question that I was asked.
Yeah.
Ed, can you give me some examples of what other partners are doing to differentiate themselves so that I can do it too? And it was this dead serious question. Like I mean, and I don't mean to make fun of the person. It was a dead serious question. They just couldn't think outside the box at all. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, it's sad because we do this all the time to ourselves, Ed. So we diminish what we are doing. So here's a little secret. Ask people what you should not change. So if you have a handful of customers you talk to in a week, say, hey, Ed, what should I not change in the way I'm working with you? What should I try to find the things that people value? So this individual you're talking about, I think just looked at it kind of like a numbers game. It's like, hey, I'll do whatever this person or that person does and I'll do just fine. The reality is that's commodity thinking.
They're commoditizing themselves in that sense. Yeah. Well, the other thing that I wanted to ask you a little bit about is when you've won nearly 100 awards, major clients, and one of the things that you talk about is overcoming prior success. Mm. What do you guys do to make sure that you don't get caught in your own trap there?
Well, on a personal basis, I am constantly driven to make sure we're growing. And I don't think things are as great as they are or as bad as they seem. Okay. But I have worked with a very, very famous, iconic brand. And very quickly, I'll share, I went into their office one day decades ago and I said, I knew they were on the decline. And I said, well, how are things going? And they said, we just sit around and look at ourselves and realize how great we are and how much success we've had. And I said, guys, things aren't as good now. Oh, no, we've got it all figured out. And literally that company within a year was on the ropes. So I think we have to stay hungry and humble because nothing is forever. That's how I look at it. And the toughest companies that I've worked with are the ones that have been successful. And they think if they don't do anything different, they're going to stay that way. And it's the opposite.
Excellent. Well, we're up against our next break. Want to remind our listeners they can get hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. Ron mentioned the Patreon channel. At a certain level, you can get a shout out. We would love for you to do that. Also, we'd love for you to go to ratethispodcast.com/TSOE, where guess what you can do? Rate this podcast. But right now, a word from our sponsors. That's differentiation right there. Rate this podcast. That's what.
I love it.
Yeah, what's that line that Marriott used to say, JW, success is never final.
Yeah.
Love that. And only the paranoid survive.
Oh, yeah. That was the Intel.
Andy Grove. I think he'd be spinning in his grave to see what's happened to Intel.
Oh, my gosh.
And Jay, what do you think of Starbucks, Barry? You think they'll find their way back, or have they just commoditized themselves too much?
I think they're on the verge of doing too much commodity thinking. I really do.
I do too.
I think that they're searching right now. I think they're in the dark. I think they're grasping right now. They're just going around going, okay, maybe this.
They turn themselves into Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
I just don't understand it. They were the epitome of moving up the value curve with coffee. They taught us all to spend $6 on it.
When all you have to do is you can order in advance, show up, go, there's no experience going on there. What's happened?
Yeah. You might as well just drive through and go to McDonald's or something. Oh, okay. This is great. Okay, Jordan, we're ready, I think.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're talking the power of differentiation with Barry LaBov. And Barry, you had a section in the book that I thought was fascinating. You tell a fascinating story about church insurance buyers, from the pastors to the secretaries to the CEO, and argue that psychographics trump demographics. Explain this. I love this.
A church insurance company approached us, and basically to give the audience an understanding, they offered insurance policies that a church would buy to protect their building and protect the people in the building, et cetera. So that's church insurance. So they came to me and the leader said, I know what I want. I want to turn into the Walmart of insurance, because all of our giant competitors that sell a little church insurance and a lot of other stuff, they're selling so much and we're not. So I want you to go out there, do your brand re-engineering process, and come back and tell me we need to be Walmart. And I said, well, I'll do the process. I don't know what we'll find. And what you're alluding to, Ed, was fascinating because, or Ron, what was fascinating was we started to talk to various people, the churches, the employees, the salespeople, and we found that, number one, their product was expensive. It was the expensive product, the premium product. Number two, they were not the fastest out there. Number three, they did anything to take care of those churches. They would bend over backwards to do anything. And number four, the churches loved the idea that every salesperson for that company was a deacon at his or her church. Well, guess what? Our client said, you know what? We're getting rid of this deacon thing. I want any salesperson to sell this stuff. And you know what? We're going to go cheapen the product, and we're going to, sell more by selling it at a cheaper price. What we had to do is we met with the leader and we said, okay, here's what's really interesting. You've got a challenge here. And he goes, yeah, the challenge is we don't understand our customers, because some of them are the minister at a little church. Some of them are the CEO of a large church, or the COO. Some of them are the impoverished person who's working there for, blank number of dollars an hour. And then some of them are retired, well-off people that handle that kind of decision. So they're all different. And I said, yes, their demographic is different, but their psychographic, their mindset is all the same. They are the protector of their church. Doesn't matter if they make $5 an hour or $5 million. It doesn't matter. So we then helped him understand that not only was their differentiator that they were a Christian-based company, but that they were the same type of people that were calling on the customers. They understood. And we came up with a concept called We Understand Why. 3 words. So the name of the company was there and their slogan, We Understand Why. And what happened was they embraced, and I'll tell you the other half of the story, Ron, because it's really interesting. They embraced this, and basically their business just dramatically upticked. The thing that was best was after we launched this, we launched it to all the employees all over the nation. And the head, the CEO of this company stood up and he said, for 20 years, we've been searching for who we were. And now we finally know. Now, this rallied their entire company, because what was going on, Ron, was people internally were going, I thought I worked at this Christian place, and now we're trying to sell things cheap. And we're getting rid of the deacons. So that's what happened. They really stepped back and realized what they did that was so special that the competition could not compare with.
Yeah, I love that. That famous article, I think it's Harvard Business Review, about Tricia Nixon Cox and Grace Slick being demographically the same woman.
Yes.
But their psychographics obviously radically different. This is a bizarre question, Barry, but if you were redesigning the U.S. Census, what psychographic questions would you want to add to it to better serve business customers?
That's an incredible question. I think that's great. The things that I think are important that are not asked are, what is your vision? I know this sounds wordy, but what is your vision for our country? I would want to get into what is that? Because I think there are assumptions made based on demographics that have really veered people off the step. And what is it? I'll go back to the question I shared earlier with Ed. What is it that you do not want our country to veer away from? What is it that you find most prideful about this country? I want to know those things.
Right. I love how you looked for the common psychographic in all those people in the church. That's very, very insightful. Explain a LaBov jam session and encore sessions.
All right. We, being a bunch of people that were formerly musicians, one day were approached by a healthcare company, $1 billion healthcare company, and they said, look, we're trying to devise a new product. We don't know what to do. Healthcare prices are being very, very challenged right now, and we need your help. We don't know what to do about it. We got 15,000 people. We're, great company, but we don't know what we're doing. And what we did is we created a jam session, and it was not just throw a bunch of ideas around. So what we did in the nutshell was, this was 6 hours we did this. And we did not want to start off and have 1,000 ideas and at the end of the day go, here's 1,000 ideas, because sometimes that's worse than not having any ideas. It's like, I don't even know where to begin. So we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start the day off. We're going to have everybody meet each other. We're going to break them into teams, but the teams are going to be like rock bands. So each team had its own name as a rock band. So they named their own rock bands. And then what we did is we had asked everybody to come prepared with 5 ideas to solve this particular challenge. So we started off with 100 plus ideas. We then had them work back and forth, and we explained to them jamming. The most important thing in jamming is not talking, it's listening. So we said, here's what you've got to do, because a lot of times in corporate America, you're waiting for that person to stop, and now it's your turn. What we said to them is, today's different. You're not going to have pressure. It's not about perfect, but you're going to listen. So they went through various phases of listening to each other and coming up with ideas. We then filtered them down to the top 3 or 4. We took a break and brought a band in, and we taught everybody how to write a song. So they all wrote a song at break. When we came back, we said, you're going to focus only on these 3 ideas you like. And just like in music, you get to go up and perform. So that's what happened. We had them all work on their top 3 ideas. At the end, they got up just like performers. They performed their ideas, shared their ideas, including getting feedback from the audience. Here's what I loved about it, and I thought this was amazing. And Ron and Ed, you've lived this with corporate America. Normally, you're done. It's like, thanks a lot, and nothing happens. Well, we said, here's the rules. We're going to give you a synopsis of exactly what happened today and those top ideas. And we want those submitted and shared with upper management within 48 hours. And they were, and 2 pilot programs began within 3 days of that event. And that's unheard of. So that's what the jam session is all about. We go through a lot of different steps, but in essence, it's a lot of listening and then it's collaboration.
God, I love that. There's so much to learn from musicians and improv comedy, right? I've heard that analogy as well. What's been the weirdest or maybe the most wonderful, or one of each, idea that's emerged from one of these sessions?
One of the ideas from the jam session was basically to have a mobile health care unit that could be dispatched to go to the homes of people who were not able to drive. And you might say, well, that sounds kind of obvious. Well, what it did was it saved the emergency room ambulance calls, all that stuff. And there was a hidden benefit to sending this group of healthcare professionals to these homes. A lot of times they would go into the home and the person's very sickly and can barely move, and they would administer to the person, and they would then say, hey, can I look in your refrigerator? And they would open up the refrigerator to see what kind of food was in there. And often some of that food was the worst food for that individual who might have diabetes or some other terrible symptom they're dealing with. So it ended up helping these people to become healthier. So it was one idea. It was an amazing idea, and it's, mobile healthcare.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You quote a guy who says words create worlds. Mm-hmm. We totally agree. We think a lot of change, it starts with linguistics, right? It's changing the language. I think about what Walt Disney did with, no, it's not an amusement park, it's a theme park.
Right.
It's not customers, they're guests, that type of thing.
Yeah.
What words do you wish more companies use to define their brand?
Well, I'll share one thing about what Disney does that I think we don't even think about. Walt Disney created this situation where you're walking up to Magic Kingdom or whatever location, and you're hearing music, and you're seeing these characters walk around. You're seeing signage that explains what's going on. It's the happiest place in the world, the biggest sign. If you didn't have that kind of information and verbiage, you might be petrified seeing these giant things walking around looking scary. I think what corporate America should look at, and I'm not going to give a word, I think what they have to do is be bold enough to use authentic language that's them, not generic language like, the same words that I shared with you earlier, where it's all the same. Let's be bold enough to admit we're not the cheapest. Let's be bold enough. Let's be bold enough to name some of our creations instead of just saying, well, it's a valve. Okay, but let's name it.
Right.
Go to the extra steps. That's what I wish corporate America would do even more.
Right. I love that part in your book where you talk about, car companies not naming their cars. I mean, and you even said Acura, and I owned a TL.
Right.
What the hell's a TL? Why don't they name it?
Right.
Give it more of an identity. That's such a good point.
Right. I talked to Acura's leaders, and they created Acura years ago, and they didn't know what to charge for it because they didn't know what the market would be. And I think they missed the boat. They had created something that should have been up there like Lexus, but they missed it.
Yeah. And I remember one of their cars was called a Legend, and that was really neat. But yeah, then they went into these two-letter definitions. But well, Barry, this is great. Ed's going to take you the rest of the way home. Folks, I'd just like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And now a word from our sponsors, including Woodard.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting.
Great stuff, Barry.
Yeah, I love the Disney story, and you're talking about the creatures. Didn't Robin Williams have a line where he brought his kids to Disney World for the first time, and she was like a 3-year-old. And she says, the one problem is that to a 3-year-old, Mickey Mouse is a 6-foot effing rat. Oh my goodness.
There's a tour, Barry, that you can take at Disneyland that is called Walking in Walt's Footsteps. And they kind of walk you through the park the way Walt originally envisioned it. And one of the reasons he had that tunnel that you walk through and emerge on Main Street was because it was like a movie opening.
Oh.
It's really cool. I mean, these docents that do this tour, they're like the cabbies in London. They have to study this huge book of knowledge on Disney, and they know everything. It was amazing. It's a great tour if you ever get the chance.
Well, one thing, I had a friend who was very close to the Disneys in California, and I had never heard of this, but there's this special club at the Disneyland.
Club 33.
33.
Yeah. And this club was all of Walt's idea, and he wanted their vendors, their top suppliers to be in there, and it was very, very prestigious, and it built such a camaraderie. It was great. And I think they disbanded it or kind of morphed out of it. They thought it was too expensive or whatever, but it was a brilliant idea.
Now it still exists. Google it. It's wild. The web page is for Club 33 is send us an email and we may or may not get back to you at some point in the future about whether or not you can join.
There's a waiting list. And Barry, one of the rumors, and I think this is true, although I've read conflicting things, but Walt created Club 33 because it's the only place that serves booze in Disneyland.
Yes.
And he was he wasn't a teetotaler, I'll just say that.
Right.
Apparently he had a bit of a drinking problem, and so, who knows?
But who knows? All right, Jordan, we're ready.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back with Barry LaBov, and the book is The Power of Differentiation. I'm going to ask you, Barry, what is I think, a deceptively simple question. Define brand.
Brand is your promise to those who utilize your product or products or services. It's your promise. That's
your promise. Okay. Yeah. And is brand something? What do you think is that those that say outside the organization? What do people outside the organization say about you? Is that brand as well, or?
Yes, it is brand. What people say about you is what they have heard about you or your experience, and it is your brand. It is your brand.
Yeah. So who owns the brand? Does the company own the brand?
That's a great question. The company can claim the brand, but when you think about it, it's in the hearts and minds of all the people that are involved with it. And we could describe the same company, the same brand very differently. But that's why it is so valuable to protect what your brand is. And as the old saying goes, you can build a brand for decades into something great, and you can lose it in seconds doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. In your brand re-engineering process, you talk about you have to start and engage with your own people first. And I say this is especially true in a re-engineering of a brand, correct? And why is that so important?
It's very important. We go through 5 steps, and one of them nobody does. Another one hardly anybody does. The others are common. So we'll talk with people to start off. We'll do an assessment, and we'll say, we'll ask them, okay, what is this brand? What's it mean to you? What could they do better? Okay, that's nice to know. That's from humans. We go inside the facility, if there's a facility, sometimes it's virtual, and we identify what is unique. We find things right in front of our clients. We go, is this something unique? And they'll go, I don't know, it might be. After we determine that and we jam with them, and we then come up with naming these things, the most important thing, Ed, you just talked about, and that is this. We have to make sure that we not only inform the people who build it, who service it, who've created it and sell it, what this brand is about, what this product stands for, but we have to celebrate it. It's a celebration. And we have to let every single person know that what they're doing is actually significant. You're not in there just walking through the paces. Everything you do is critical because of what we do here, which is special, which is unique. So it's critical to engage your people. And it's funny, the engagement of your team, and that team could be 2 people, could be 10,000 people, could have dealers, distributors, whatever. The engagement of that group is the cheapest investment you'll make in growing your company, because you don't have to go advertise to them. They're right there, but they need to be your army. And when you have an army like that, they're the ones that can kind of calm people down if there's been a bad experience, or help explain why you're doing something. It's incredible. That's the subtitle of my book, which is Win, W-I-N, Win Hearts, Minds, and Market Share, because that's the order. You got to win the hearts of your people. You got to get them thinking that, wait a minute, this is smart. And then you know what? You're going to get some market share.
It's incredible that you're saying this. Is one of the things that I've noticed in my time with corporate America, and Greg, who is on with us now, we're both at the same company at the same time, that it actually changed all of its name brands to numbers. Literally changed all of its name brands to numbers. And I kid you not, when you go to a conference now with this Sage, I'll just say they have a card that they have to have at their kiosk, right, that still makes all of the transitions because their customers still call it the old names.
Right. Well, think about this. Those of us who have children, we don't have child 1, child 2, and child 3.
Thing 1, thing 2 in Dr. Seuss maybe, but yeah.
Right. And when we name our child, we tell people why we named our child that. And then after the child's growing up, we tell what's special about our child. So why in the world would we not think that way about those rare things we do at our companies?
And every major religion has a naming ritual.
Yes. Right. Well, that's why when Ron talked about Acura, it was a disconnect. And also, I worked with Cessna and Citation, and I couldn't understand it. They had a Bravo jet. They had an XL. They had a 1. They had a 1 Plus. They had an XLS. And I said to the president at the time, I said, I can't figure your naming convention out, number one. I said, number two, when I'm out on the tarmac, I can't tell if it's a Cessna Citation. I can't see your logo. And he said, okay, well, number one, he said, I can't figure our naming convention either. I don't know. I have no idea. We just added stuff as years went on. And then here's the other thing. He said, we got rid of our logo on our jets because one customer asked to put his company's logo on. We then got rid of ours, and our operations group said, you know what? We could save $1 million a year not painting our logo on our jets. So they went back to painting their logo on the jets because he said, you know what, honestly, I got to tell you, I don't know if it's our jet on the tarmac sometimes. So we have to realize, come on, that's important. Whether you name it, whether, you know, it's like how many people owned an MP3 player, and not many people raise their hand. Okay, how many owned an iPod? Well, almost everybody. It's an MP3 player. You named it. Now it's got value.
Oh,
right?
and Apple is the master at this. They've got an entire website, I don't know if you've seen it, dedicated to all of the names that they use for their stuff.
Well, it's worth a lot more money than saying, hey, if you want to buy this company, we make MP3 players, computers, and phones.
Yeah. No, because even AI is not artificial intelligence, it's Apple intelligence.
That's good.
That's how I do it. We've got a few minutes left, and want to talk about this too. How often have you had to say to people, because I know, and I'm not a differentiation brand consultant, but I've had this conversation. I'll give them a suggestion as to what they can do from a differentiation standpoint, and they'll say something like, well, my competitors don't do that. And I'm just like, yeah.
Right. I will hear from time to time, they'll say, well, wait a minute, nobody in our industry has done that.
That means I've done my job, right?
Right. Yeah, so I have heard that. And we have to strive to do something a little different or something a little unique. You know, we said earlier in the show, it's not about perfection. I'm a big fan of piloting something. Let's go pilot this thing. Let's try it. Let's work with a few clients and see if that works. But yes, I have heard that.
Yeah. And Leslie, you've alluded to this in your conversation with Ron. Is it sometimes easier for someone, rather than rebrand, to just start a whole new entity? This is a big debate sometimes Ron and I have. It might be just easier to start a whole new company than to try to rebrand internally.
That's a great question, and it comes down to some very, very important questions. Number one, have you a strong brand right now at all? Is it strong? Does it have a great following or not? And if it doesn't, okay, there's not a lot of value there. And the other is, did you have a strong brand, and did you do something that hurt it, that you need to distance from? And that's what it comes down to. But most of the time it's like, come on, let's build on what we've got.
That's generally your advice is to build on what you have.
Yeah. I mean, we changed the name of one company, but we didn't change who they were. We called them Copperworks instead of SDI Lafarga LLC. Yeah. A little catchier.
It comes a little bit more trippingly off the tongue, as Shakespeare might say. Well, Barry, this has been absolutely fantastic. What a great conversation. As Ron alluded to earlier, it's always the fastest hour of our week to do this show. We really appreciate you being on today. So thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you and Ron. You both are such great thought leaders in the industries that you serve. And I've followed you. I have your books. I listen to what your radio shows are telling me, and I learn every day. So I thank both of you because, yes, you have your clients, but you're also helping thousands of other people be better at what they do. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Barry. Ron, what do we got coming up next week?
Next week, Ed, we're going to talk to Nick Asbury, and he wrote a book called The Road to Hell and Bad Marketing. And this is basically a screed against Simon Sinek's Why.
Oh.
So if you want to hear the other side of the argument, this guy's got it. The book is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I'll see you in 167 hours.
This has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week, folks, at Friday at noon Pacific time. In the meantime, check us out at thesoulofenterprise.com. We'll have full show notes on our conversation today with Barry and where you can find his book. And also, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a great weekend.
All clear. Great show.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. Take care.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you. Guys, you did
Awesome.
great. Great questions. You
So
guys,
did you.
you guys are such naturals. You just go back and forth, and I mean, I love it.
Well, I gotta tell you, Barry. I mean, this does occasionally happen. I prepared a dozen or so questions for you, and I asked a grand total of one of them from my list, and then I just was jamming literally off of the conversation that you were having with Ron and the answers you were giving. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really interesting, guys, because you worked back and forth with really good questions, and they led us to different areas. But I thought they were very fruitful. It's just you were using a lot of creativity in your questioning. I mean, these were creative questions. It wasn't like, how did you start your business? Well, no. What is a brand? Okay, well, boy, here we go. I mean, it was really out there. So I thought you guys did great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Barry.
Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And I appreciate you taking on my question, defining brand. I find a lot of people have a trouble with that. Even people who, it's just like, okay.
Well, my favorite word that nobody understands is strategy.
For sure.
Yes. I'll have a client go, I need more strategy. And I'm going, okay, what is strategy? And I got to tell you, I was on a call yesterday with a multi-billion-dollar company, and they said, hey, we've got a strategy deck we're putting together on X. And I thought, well, I'm doing all this creative and doing this. I thought, what? There's somebody internally saying this. So I gave them time to go talk through it. And their version of strategy is, here's where we want to put billboards and social media.
It's a plan. Not strategy.
It's not strategy. Yeah.
Right. It's a plan. And I thought, okay, but you're calling it strategy. And I have another client, we need more strategy. And we said, okay, but we've talked about these things. He said, no, do we want a brochure or do we want to go a PDF? And it's, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying it's this very great sounding word, strategy. I'm a strategist. And by the way, guys, we're off camera now or off the radio show. How many?
We are still streaming.
Okay. How many of your clients, thank you. How many of your clients think they're strategic, but they're really not strategic?
A lot, if not most.
Yeah.
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 There's the
Well-
rare client that is, but most of them are not. That's not their role. I mean, it might be their title, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Roger Martin.
Roger Martin's got a great video, Barry. You can find it on YouTube. It's like 12 or 8 minutes on the difference between strategy and planning. He boils it down so beautifully in this short video clip. It's
all right.
really good.
I'm going to look at it. Roger Martin.
Roger
Yeah.
Martin, he's a Canadian business professor. I forget the school, but he's really good. He's an excellent strategy author. One
That's
of my
great.
favorites.
I'll check
Yeah.
it out. I will.
Yeah. Good
Awesome.
stuff. Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, guys.
This was wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Have a great weekend, too.
All right.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Overtime.
Greg was
All right.
tweeting up a storm because my watch was blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gave me carpal tunnel.
You guys have heard me describe many of your guests as highly quotable, and Barry falls into that category. He's
he
got
does.
great,
does.
short, succinct statements to your questions. Some of your guests give longer, deeper answers, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But when you run up against a quotable guest, it's the fastest hour of the week for me.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Now I did this. This is unrelated. Well, actually, let's do the related stuff first. You mentioned Starbucks in your conversation with Barry and how they have possibly fallen into the long-term trap of commodity thinking. I'm with you. I don't understand Starbucks anymore. I thought I used to. It was the third space. It made a lot of sense to me. Now it's just a $6 cup of coffee, and I don't know why I would do that when I can go to McDonald's and get $1 coffee, right? And put enough cream and sugar in it so it doesn't matter. And you can do the Dunkin' Donuts as well. Having come off of our family trip overseas to Italy, and I think that's where Starbucks pulls a lot of its original inspiration from. They're doing it wrong now, for sure.
Are they really?
It was amazing to me that the bars in Italy, and they call them bars, by the way. They're cafes or bars. And the reason that they're bars is because in the morning they serve coffee, pastries. In the afternoon, hand food, sandwiches, things like that. And in the evening, you can get a drink there. So it's a bar. It's just a coffee bar in the morning and an alcoholic bar in the evening, right? These are neighborhood gathering spots. These are places where you walk in the door and Joey has already paid for your coffee, even though he's not there anymore, because he knew you would be in that morning for your morning cappuccino. It's prepaid. He pays it forward, and you have a better day because someone was thinking about you, right? That's the position in our lives that Starbucks held as much as it can in the US, where it's more about suburban sprawl than dense urban living. But that's the position in my mind that Starbucks held for a long time. And they most certainly do not do that anymore.
Yeah, I have a article, and it's from Joe Pine. He linked to it in his newsletter, and it's about, can Starbucks find its way back? Because the new CEO that I know you've talked about before, he's bringing back certain things. The Sharpie pen with your name. He's putting in the comfy chairs again into the establishment. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they can get back some of that magic.
Yeah, it doubly so for me because I'm, first of all, I'm not qualified to be the CEO of Starbucks, so it's very easy for me to talk, right? But I am concerned about his background. Chipotle earned a reputation for commodity fast casual while he was the CEO of Chipotle. If you read the Chipotle subreddit at this point, most of the posts are, I'm done and I'm not going back. What happened to this place?
Wow.
You used to get bigger portions. You used to be able to ask for things that the employees would gladly do. And now it's very clear that they are being managed specifically to the dollar. And the dollar drives their decision. And, as a business, I understand, but you've got some room there to engender trust and loyalty amongst your customers. And Chipotle over the last 5 or so years seems to have flushed that loyalty and trust. And Oh, who was CEO during that time? The current CEO of Starbucks. So there is some doubt in my mind, but I do not want to unnecessarily cast out because again, I'm not qualified to be the Starbucks of CEO, and I hope he is wildly successful. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So he turned it into Taco Bell, kind
I
of.
mean, yeah, and an expensive one at that. I priced out. I don't have occasion to eat at Chipotle often, but I priced out a bowl the other day, and when I was done, it was like $17.
Wow.
That's a lot of money for a
So,
taco
yeah,
bowl.
that is.
Although I in that same exercise, I priced out McDonald's and Zaxby's and Wendy's, also restaurants that I don't have an occasion to eat at a lot, or well, really ever, because I don't eat fast food. But that's not the point, right? At McDonald's, it was $12. At Zaxby's, it was $18, and at Wendy's, it was like 12 and a half.
Hmm.
You can go to the grocery store and buy $20 worth of fruit and vegetables and eat for days.
Days. Yeah, yeah.
So,
true.
fast food used to be fast and convenient, or fast and cheap,
Cheap.
and it is neither now. It is neither fast nor cheap.
So
Sorry, Ed,
true.
go ahead.
Oh,
You're muted, Ed.
Can't hear you. So, Greg, did Barry say anything that struck you? I mean, other than I know you tweeted him out, but
Yeah.
anything that hit a chord?
Yeah, most definitely. The one that I latched onto immediately was desperate brands make desperate decisions.
Yeah, no, I like that.
That rings so true to me because I've been in any number of organizations that in the corporate space that manage to operational expenses. So the name of the game is
Sage.
OpEx,
Sage.
right? Axo Nobel was
Sage.
one that was near and dear. I worked there for 13 years. Loved the company, loved the people. It was a great time, but it was a chemicals manufacturer, and so there's not a lot of growth and innovation there. As I'd mentioned before, it was a very sexy job. I sold car paint to body shops, right? Not a tremendous amount of information. So it's about the relationship, right? Because of the lack of innovation, and it's about the cost. So you end up managing the company based on operational expenses, and you may not even know it, but you squeeze out every ounce of heart and soul that existed. And Ed, you've got a great point, right? The most disconnected Sage customers likely have ever felt from the brand is when we moved, and I say we, I was a part of the marketing team at the time, reporting directly to the CMO that made these choices, right? So collectively, I own it. When we moved to the numbering system, it felt less human. It made sense to me because I'd studied it and learned it. It was, and the corollary we drew internally was BMW.
Yep.
The 3 Series, the 5 Series,
5.
the 7 Series, right? Makes sense. All right, you got Sage 50, 100, 3, right? Okay, cool. But it felt less human, and it is so darn difficult to ascribe value to that, and that's why people like Barry are so good at what they do.
Look, my wife's company is on the Sage product. They still call it Mass 90.
Mass 90.
They still call it Mass 90. It has not been Mass 90 for 15 years.
Yep.
They still call it Mass 90.
I heard her use that phrase not 2 months ago.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all the time. And I'm not kidding. If you go to the Sage booth, Ron, Wendy Worson will have a little card that says Sage 50 equals Peachtree.
That is hilarious, Ed. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people are just completely, and I was against it. Well, the great irony though is that not long after that, 2 years after, Sage buys a company called Sage Intact, right, and has kept that brand. And I remember having the conversation with, I think it was your boss, Gaby, at the time, because was she there? I think she was there when that started, when that began to go down. And there was a push to say, well, we need to rename it Sage 1000. That's what we need to do.
No, that would have been a disaster.
Yeah, there's a lot of recognition in the marketplace for Intact, and you certainly want to ride that. I feel a bit biased in my instance because not only was I an employee of Sage, but I also live in the Atlanta market where Peachtree Accounting, very obviously to some, started. So I can still say Peachtree Accounting today to people who operate businesses in the Atlanta market. They go, oh yeah, that's what we use. If it's not into it, right? And that I think skews my view of the world even more so because I'm in the Atlanta market.
Well, that you do have like every other street is named Peachtree too, which is
my office is on Peachtree Parkway. That is the mailing address of my firm is 410 Peachtree Parkway, and
which one of the 1,000 Peachtree whatevers?
and I live 56 miles from the Atlanta airport.
Yeah, no, it's Peachtree.
And we are on Peachtree Parkway. Yep, yep. My neighborhood, the subdivision we live in, is off of Peachtree Parkway. It's just, you can't get away from it.
No, it's insane. What I did want to bring up when you guys were talking about Starbucks, and I did talk about this last week, Ron, if you remember, but they do seem to be trying to get back to that human touch. This was a quote from the now CEO and the guy who was at Chipotle. We over-rotated on the idea of equipment and that replacing humanity of service, and I think that service is our point of difference. So right there, they're I think making the attempt to get back in. Although I will say I passed by the store that was the Starbucks Reserve in Dallas. It is no longer a Starbucks Reserve. It is just a Starbucks now.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They changed it from the Starbucks Reserve back to just a regular Starbucks.
I wonder if they're getting rid of the Reserve.
Yeah, I don't know. No.
I think it was the most recent time that Schultz took the CEO reign of Starbucks again. One of the things that he noticed was that they'd put in more vertically speaking, machines at the counters,
Yep.
and you could no longer make eye contact with the baristas. So they rotated away from those tall machines to the more expensive equipment that the now CEO of Starbucks is talking about how they rotated too heavily into. So I'm not sure what, at the end of the day, like you could probably have just a bunch of Nespresso or Keurig pod machines in there and we'd still pay you money. So don't know that the equipment is the problem.
Right. Yeah. No, I think, and that was funny because in the book, Pour Your Heart Into It, or his second one, I think, Schultz said that was a Lean Six Sigma move.
Oh, when I was a Six Sigma green belt, the Starbucks time study was the most popular
Case
time study cited. Absolutely, every step. And I don't want to defend Six Sigma, but there are some benefits in an environment like Starbucks in which you are forced to think about how many rotations you make in a confined space and where stuff is. And you see that in things like kitchen design. For example, you don't want to place the dishwasher too far away from the sink. If it's on the other side of the kitchen, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So I think that's what they were really getting at in the time study. But of course, it went way too far because it was a Six Sigma initiative.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wild.
And so I've got something unrelated now to the show, but I thought it was great and I wanted to share it with the two of you in your audience. I recently renewed my TSA pre-check, right? Comes up once every 5 years. Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 5, yeah.
Very, very easy process. You put your number and you put your card. It's a standard checkout. It's like $56 to renew for the next 5 years.
And online.
Online.
You did it online. Okay.
Yeah, you just do it online. Very, very easy. And at the end, there's a little I agree button, right? You gotta agree to you've seen it, you gotta check the box, you agree to the terms and services, wherever it is. I captured the text of this agree button because it was hilarious. The text is, I agree to the refund policy, including that this payment is non-refundable. And I'll read that again. I agree to the refund policy, including that this payment is non-refundable. That's the box I had to check to complete the credit card transaction for my government renewal of TSA PreCheck.
It's very meta.
Yeah.
It's very government.
It's like I've posted about this a number of times, and I think they finally got rid of it, but it took 10 years when I renewed my driver's license with Texas, or not the registration, car registration. You get a $1 discount for buying on the web, but then they add a $2 service charge.
And Greg, being able to renew pre-online, that's a relatively new thing, isn't it? Because when I renewed my last one, I went to an Office Depot location.
If you let it expire, you have to go.
Oh, maybe that was it. Maybe that was I couldn't do it online. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That could
But
have been it.
you're right, Ron. There are Office Depot, Staples, whatever it's called now, because they've all bought each other.
Which I had to do once too. And this is the average Office Depot employee is who we are trusting with national security. I mean, when you think about it, like this like some schmo with an earring thing in his ear and like, you know,
Who sells us
paper clips is like verifying your identity because you know he's real good.
Well, the guy who served me was a TSA employee. He had a uniform. And
okay.
That to me that seemed really bizarre.
Yeah, they have limited hours in those locations because you can go to the airport and renew it, but who wants to do that,
Yeah,
right?
who wants to do that,
So
right.
most people renew at these external locations, and they've expanded and shrunk them over the years, I've noticed. The only reason I have any information here is because both of my kids, when they were either 12 or 13 years old, needed to get pre-checked because they could no longer draft on hours. They had sort of aged out. Like if you travel with a child who's 9 years old and you are pre-check, that child is automatically pre-check as well.
Pre-check.
They're not going to make the kid go through the other line.
Right.
But when they
Right.
turn 12 or 13, they need their own
Their own.
Yes.
screening. So I had to take both of my kids separately to Office Depot to do the screening. And it was hilarious because I sort of had to coach them. I was like, you're going to get questions. I don't know what those questions are. They're going to probably be very serious, not the questions, but the individual asking the questions. Just answer to the best of your ability and we'll hope that it goes through. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they were TSA employees who were in an Office Depot location for a limited period of time every day or every other day for, say 2 to 3 hours. The little cubicle off in the corner, like they with the fabric wall and the glass at the top. And it was a weird thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the problem with bringing up your kids libertarian is they tend to then ask questions like, "Am I being detained? do you have a warrant? What?"
Is that an order?
Yep. We were. We did run the risk once of being detained for longer than we had intended to when going through customs, because my son was 8 years old, seven years old, I think. He'd just gotten his passport. This was his first international trip, and he had not signed the last page.
Yep.
So I'm going through with him. My wife has my daughter. Right, we separate and batch out the work. And I go through no problem, and then he's stuck on the other side of the desk, and they're talking to him, and they're like the guy was follow me, and I'm like whoa, where's he going? That's a minor, right?
Yeah.
He's like, come with me, and he's like, he didn't sign it. I'm like, he doesn't have a signature really yet. He goes, he didn't sign it. I was like, okay, I think I understand what's going on. Bray didn't sign it. And he wrote his name, just not in cursive. He just wrote his name. And the guy let us through. Yeah. So sometimes it's, you just play the game and you're fine, right? But it was a little unnerving for 30 seconds.
I bet. And of course, we all had to get the real ID too, right? I mean, that was a joy.
Yeah, that hasn't cropped up for us because the state of Georgia moved to the Real ID system quite a while ago. And we were one of the first two, I think now there are 7 or 8. We were one of the first 2, including Arizona, states to, and I don't know why it's us. We were one of the first 2 states, including Arizona, to be allowed to place our driver's license on our iPhones as official ID.
We still don't have that in Texas.
Right.
It makes me
Right,
nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me crazy.
And it's not it's not all it's cracked up to be, because many international airports in the United States will accept an ID on your phone, some will not. So if you want to travel without your physical ID under the pretense of many will accept it, but some will not, feel free, but you still really have to have your license.
As long as they
or your passport
accept
with
it
you.
in the States, I'm fine.
Yeah, but
International,
not-
I'm going to bring my passport. Fine.
Not all international airports in the United States accept the digital ID. They're still rolling it out. So you're not missing much. And then I also find that here in the state of Georgia, no bars will accept it. None. Yeah. So I'm not sure what the value is yet. I guess it just takes time. You remember when Apple released their version of tap to pay, but
Right.
it wasn't accepted anywhere, and everybody's like, "What? Why do I even have?" Like, it'll just take time to make it through the system. But because Android also allows for driver's licenses as official ID on phones, it feels to me like it's just a matter of time before systems external to Android or iOS catch up and begin accepting them as official ID.
Sounds right.
Right, but it does open up a whole new world of fake IDs for college students.
Perfect.
Yep. So with that, you guys have a bonus show to do, and I'm going to run.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, Greg.
All right. Have an
Have a good
excellent weekend.
You too. Oh boy. Lay stack. Okay, Ed, when we talked last week on the bonus, we were talking about the Israel strike.
Yeah.
And you brought up the wag the tail.
Dog. Yeah.
Yep. And now some of the stuff is releasing on the Mossad, the intelligence unit of Israel. This is from the Jewish Chronicle, and this is in Jim Garrity in National Review, but he's quoting from the Jewish Chronicle, citing a Mossad source or sources, and he said this is straight out of an espionage thriller. Israel's Secret Service used a fake phone call to trick the top commanders of Iran's Air Force into gathering at a single location before taking them all out in a targeted strike. So they created a fake phone call for 20 members of the Air Force senior staff, calling them to a specific bunker in Tehran. Using falsified communications through Iranian channels, they triggered what appeared to be an emergency meeting. They drew the senior leadership to this fortified bunker, and that bunker was hit in a precision airstrike, eliminating Iran's top missile command. And Garrity says their last thought, this meeting could have been an email.
Oh, that's brutal. Ooh. Should have been an email. Should have been. Could have been.
Could have been.
Could have been. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, but whatever Mossad is doing, hats off. It's amazing work.
They probably have some Nobels in there, I mean, these are really, really clever. Anyway, just thought that was a great line.
So I know we talked about this way back, but I think it was when Biden refused to sell U.S. steel to the Japanese company, or wouldn't let the sale go through.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw this, but the Trump administration has allowed this to go through. Unfortunately, it comes with some very interesting strings attached.
Yes, it does.
Including that the relocation of the steel headquarters from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania must be, the president of the United States has to authorize any of the following: changes to the headquarters, redomiciling outside the United States, the change of the company name, reduce, waive, or delay the $14 billion in investments into U.S. Steel, transfer the production of jobs outside the United States, close idle plants before certain timeframes other than normal temporary idling, and other protections regarding the employee salaries, anti-dumping pricing, raw materials, and sourcing outside the U.S., acquisitions, and more. In other words, U.S. Steel has now been nationalized.
Yes, it has.
Like, are you actually kidding me?
We're going backwards, Ed. We're going backward. Margaret Thatcher privatized the airline, the electrical companies, the coal, And here we are nationalizing them. Oh, and the infant industry argument. Oh, we need to protect our infant industries. Steel is a hacking, wheezing old man, and it's still on the government, T. And now we've nationalized it.
That the president of the United States have to sign off on any of these things, completely absurd. And you know what? No one's saying boo about this.
I know. Oh,
no one's saying boo about this.
I'm incensed about this. This is as stupid as our Chrysler bailout in the 70s that I still can't get over. The crap that we did with General Motors, and then we had, remember, or Government Motors, GM, right?
Yeah,
government.
yeah.
Well, now it's government steel. I guess I don't know. It's crazy.
Outrageous, absolutely outrageous, as far as I'm concerned. And then the other, go ahead.
Isn't the post office one too many? I mean, let's stop this.
Well, and then the other thing, I don't know if you saw this, but Trump has extended for another 90 days the required sale of TikTok. This is legislation that was duly passed by Congress that says absolutely nothing about this, that the president can unilaterally decide about this. And now all of a sudden, and everyone's okay with this, that nobody's complaining about it. The Congress that passed the law is not complaining about it. There's nobody on either side of the mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, or Fox, complaining about this. It's like, oh, well, of course the president, because and then we're like, oh, but if we just have our guy in there, it's going to make a difference. No, the problem is the system. We have created an imperial presidency, and it continues to worsen. What the F are we actually doing here?
I agree. If the left side of the aisle did this, the right would be up in arms. They'd be drafting impeachment.
But why isn't the left upset about either one of these things?
I can't figure out.
Must be because they figure, well, we'll be in power someday and it'll be fine, and we'll be the ones that can do all of this stuff. Yeah.
Between the airplane gift, between the tariffs that he's got absolutely no authority constitutionally to do, I mean, this is just absurd. And now we've nationalized the steel company. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me. This guy is the Tasmanian devil. He just creates chaos. And that's not good for an economy, to create chaos and uncertainty. I mean, Ed, we're coming up on the July 9th tariff deadline. What the hell's going to happen?
90 deals in 90 days, Ron. 90 deals in 90 days.
I listened to some of these trade experts like Scott Lincecum, and I don't know, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was the Woodard podcast. They had a BDO trade expert on, and he was talking about, how you have to keep track of this, and some of these things might apply for a refund, qualify for a refund if the tariff stops at a certain time. I mean, there's all sorts of technical little crappy details in these tariffs, and it's a nightmare. If you're a small business, this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yep. And no accounting system is set up to do it. You've got to create a separate set of books for this to keep track of it. All by the trade number or whatever they call it.
Right.
Everything's assigned a number, and it's just ludicrous. I hate this. It's killing our economy. I don't know what the hell he's doing.
Well, but the stock market is still at 42,000. It's just kind of humming along, and nobody's saying boo. And
until he changes his mind on tariffs and does something really stupid.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I don't know. Well, speaking of stupid, Gavin Newsom's last gasp. Newsom's failures. This guy. And this came about because of the kerfuffle over the riots and the National Guard, which I guess the Ninth Circuit said, no, Trump's got every right to do this. Kind of couldn't believe that coming from the Ninth Circuit, right? That they back the president on calling out the National Guard. But Newsom, I mean, his homelessness, he spent $24 billion. We've got nothing more but more of it. He hasn't built an inch of the high-speed rail. He's increased the regulatory burdens. These 2 refineries have left the state. New housing construction. This is fascinating, Ed. They've issued 21 new permits to rebuild the 9,400 structures that were destroyed just in the Altadena wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area builds more homes per year than the entire state of California.
Well, because because you all are moving here.
Well, yes, and look, I realize DFW is a huge area, but so is California. California has the highest poverty rate, some of the highest taxes. This guy has been a disaster. And, I often wonder if you remember when like Giuliani didn't play well beyond New York, in the presidential, the governor from Wisconsin, flamed out. Mm-hmm. These various governors flame out because they just don't play well beyond their state or their region. I think Newsom might be in this category. He's just seemed to piss off both sides with his new podcast and talking to, conservatives like Charlie Kirk or whoever, and being wishy-washy on like the trans issue with the sports and all of that. I just don't know. This guy, I still think he's a threat, but I don't know if he plays outside of California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. He's not playing in Texas. Let's put it that way.
Or Florida.
Yeah. I'm sure you probably saw part of this on the 17th of June, so 3 days ago. Maine Governor Janet Mills signed a bill, LD 1789, that allows candidates seeking to become certified public accountants to take the CPA exam after completing just 120 hours of college credit, rather than the 150 previously required. There was opposition to broader provisions in the legislation from the state's Office of Professional and Finance Regulation. Lawmakers opted to amend the bill, removing the so-called CPA pathways provisions that would have enabled candidates to be licensed with just 120 credit hours, 2 years of professional experience, and the passage of the CPA exam. So you still have to, I guess, have an accounting degree rather than just any degree.
What state was this?
Maine.
You should be able to take the CPA exam with no college education.
Right.
If you can pass that thing from self-study, we're excluding the Frank Lloyd Wrights and the Thomas Edisons and the people who learn not by the traditional method. We're excluding them. Mm-hmm. You got to go and get your hand stamped, and you got to do it the same way. But there's all sorts of different ways to learn. I mean, if homeschooling has taught us anything, it's that.
Yes.
Some of the brightest students at Harvard, Yale, all the Ivies are homeschooled.
Right. Yeah.
And yet the licensing structure shuts the door on those people. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it creates groupthink.
Yes. Well,
which is the most dangerous.
Mm-hmm. So this is the last quote here from Brigham, who's again the head of this association. We had to make a strategic decision to abandon CPA pathways licensure to salvage the exam issue. Maine has a shortage of accountants, and we did not want to continue that. There you go.
This is just like all the regulatory loosenings that happened under COVID. What does that tell you? It tells you they're stupid and useless, and harmful. Mm-hmm. This kind of blew my mind. The Democrats are spending $20 million on the initiative Speaking with American Men, the SAM project, as it's called. And this article's about that. I don't care about that. This is what caught me, Ed. And we've talked about this before, but let's put some facts around it. Gen Z men are more likely to regularly attend religious services than millennial men. And turning to religion for community after the pandemic lockdowns. This is a worldwide phenomenon as church attendance has quadrupled among Gen Zers in the UK. And the Catholic Church in France has baptized more adults in 2025 than it has in the last 20 years.
Wow.
Now, look, I know you're probably coming from a small base, but that's pretty interesting.
Well, no, it's not quite as dramatic, but I may have mentioned this, but the Easter Vigil is when Catholics baptize adults. It's only once a year, unlike infant baptism, which can happen any Sunday,
anytime.
Right? It can happen outside this, but typically it happens as part of the Easter Vigil. And my church, we had 22 people who were received into the Catholic Church, and the previous to that, I think the high was like 5.
Wow.
So, yeah, in any one year.
What do you think's going on?
Well, in our particular case, but and by the way, this is not just our church. I've vetted this with like my in-laws' church. That same thing. A significant
And Acton's
increase.
talked about this
Yeah,
too.
yeah, significant increase to it. I think that people are finding that religions that are 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 years old may have some wisdom in
Something
them.
to say,
It's possible that if your institution has been around for a millennia, that you might have something there.
And longer than Lindy's cheesecake, even.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I'll say that my son is far more in tune with his faith than I was at his age. Far more.
I know it's not a monocausal explanation, but I think Jordan Peterson has moved the needle somewhat with men.
With men. Yeah. And look, I think it's women too, but I think that they play. This story was about the men speaking to American men, but I definitely find that younger people are more apt to be religious in some way, and or find spirituality something that they connect with. So,
yep. All right.
Okay. So we've talked about this in the past. Shohei Ohtani.
Yes.
And he had his $700 million 10-year contract with the Dodgers. He receives only $20 million across the 10 seasons, and then $68 million each year for the decade after that. Except don't feel too bad for Shohei, Ron, because in 2024 his total earnings were $102 million.
Endorsements.
Uh-huh.
Wow. What kind of things does Shotani endorse?
Lots of things, I suppose, but it's not even just here, but it's in Japan, because that's obviously
yeah.
So, and I'm sure that he gets a cut of stuff that the Dodgers do in his uniform sales and all of those things. If you sell something with Ohtani across the back and the jersey and etc. But yeah, not too shabby if you're going to make $80+ million in endorsements. It's enabling him to survive on that only measly $20 million that he has to take home this year.
That's how he can cover how he can cover his PA's gambling issue, didn't he?
Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of speculation that maybe it wasn't exactly
his PA. It was Oh geez. Is he still just remarkable player? I mean, still doing remarkable things?
And he's starting to pitch again now. Because for the last 2 years he had Tommy John and he couldn't pitch. So, and he still won the MVP last year, and he didn't pitch. He actually didn't even play the field. He just DH'd. That's all he did was hit.
Wow. And he was MVP?
Uh-huh. Well, he had a 50-50 season, the first ever 50-50, 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases.
Wow. Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Well, this was annoying, Ed. This is Dominic Pino. He starts this article by saying 96%. That's the proportion of growth in total government employment since 1955 that is from the state and local government employment, according to BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics. In 55, the first year in which BLS for federal, state, and local government employment are available, there were 6.95 million civilian government employees. Today, there are 23.6. 240% increase is much higher than the 127% increase in population. But of the 16.7 million additional government employees since 55, 15.9 million of them are in state and local government. So federal government, is relatively flat, growing a little, but state and local have exploded 379%. While federal is only grown by 31%. That's kind of astonishing.
Yeah.
I mean, state governments are even bloated.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And yeah, I think I saw this stat recently. 80% of state government is education.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true. Yep. And the administrator, when you break that down with administrators and teachers, oh my God, is that out of whack?
The administrators is what's going up. The teacher salaries haven't gone up because it's all administrators now.
And that's even true in the Ivies. I was listening to a podcast. Well, it was Cato Events with Richard Vedder, who's I think at Ohio State University, or was. I think he's retired now. But anyway, he's written a lot about education and the problem with colleges, and he says we need to let these things fail.
Yeah.
He said we need some Schumpeterian creative destruction. These things need to go the way of the dodo bird. And he talked about all the companies that have gone down since the last 100 years, and yet look at our he's talking about the Ivies, obviously, but they hang around forever. I think you lose your way after a while. But who knows?
All right. Came across this one, and there's something here I'm not smart enough to be able to figure this out, so we may have to send it to our friends Gail Pooley and Marion Tupy. This is a chart that I saw. Is visualcapitalist.com is the website. The working hours needed to exit poverty in OECD countries. I'll say that again. Working hours needed to exit poverty in OECD countries. And specifically, this is what are the number of weekly hours needed for a person with no children earning 67% of the country's average wage to rise above the poverty line. I know that's complicated, so let that sink in a little bit. Average working hours needed for a person with no children earning 2/3, 67% of the country's average wage to rise above the poverty line. The country in the OECD that the most number of hours is Slovenia. By far, it requires almost a full-time week, 35 hours a week to get to the poverty line. And the United States is fourth on the list. They're at 26 hours. And then the country of the OECD countries that is on the bottom of the list is Turkey, and it's 9 hours. But I think the most curious is actually the one above Turkey. So this is, out of 26 countries, so 25th on the list. The UK at 14 hours. Now, and when I came across this, it feels like this is somehow related to time prices. But I can't quite figure out what the actual relationship is. So maybe I just send this in to Marion and Gail Pooley and say, you guys are a lot smarter with this. I think there's a connection here, but maybe not.
Well, I'll tell you what blows the connection: the definition of the poverty line. And we've talked about this before, how arbitrary that is. Remember, the U.S. definition of poverty comes from a late night jam session. I think some bureaucrat in the Department of Agriculture who basically looked at a basket of goods and multiplied it by 3 or 4. I forget the ratio. And it kind of hasn't been adjusted ever since. So, and we're talking about anytime you hear the poverty line, poverty rate, that's relative poverty.
Well, it is relative. It is, of course. Right? Now they did define it in this source, so it is consistent across countries. So the poverty line is for this study was considered 50% of the median disposable income in the country.
Yeah, see, but even that's
arbitrary.
Even that's arbitrary because, I mean, as we know, with time prices, most things we buy have dramatically decreased.
Right.
So I think, channeling Gail Pooley's brain, which I can't do because I'm not smart enough, but I think he would attack the poverty line stat and say, no, we need to convert that to absolute poverty.
Well, yes. And then also, this is 1 year, or actually it's 3 years worth of data that they're looking at. But you would have to look at this over time, right? To see, because the change would really be the more interesting thing.
What's really interesting, Ed, is that, like you said, the Turkey and the UK, especially. Let's just pick the UK because I think we know more about the UK.
Yeah.
Well, at least I do than Turkey.
Right.
But UK, they have certain employment. You can hire, but hard to fire.
Yeah.
If you do fire, you have to pay. I mean, I wonder how all that fits in there. Unemployment thresholds and things like that. But the fact that you could work 35 hours in the U.S. and hit the poverty line, seems to me it wouldn't take that long. I think that would also...
No, U.S. isn't 35. It was Slovenia that was 35.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we were 26.
Yeah, we were 26.
It seems to me that would also have to be adjusted regionally, right? 26 hours in California versus Mississippi or Louisiana. But yeah, it would be. I wonder if Gail's going to comment on this. We should send them this.
We should. Okay.
And he should do a Gale win, on his Substack about it. I'm
sure like I said.
Yeah. I think that would be really interesting. But
all right, well, I'll send it to him then and see. But it's like it just smells to me like it's related. But like I said, I'm not smart enough to make the connection.
Oh yeah, no. I think they could probably do something that would put it in a different light. And maybe adjust it with time prices. But yeah, it'd be kind of a complex thing depending on how they're defining stuff,
Yeah.
Where did I get this? I think this is Andrew. Yeah, this is Andrew Studiford. In the year 1000 AD, the global GDP. Now, look, people are going to say, well, how would you possibly know what the global GDP was in the year 1000 AD, right? But believe it or at 2021 prices, but believe it or not, there's been a lot of economic work trying to estimate that. They could be way off, whatever, but it was around 281 billion in 2021 a half a millennium later, it's 584 billion. So not a whole lot of progress over 500 years, right? So that's by 1500. By 1700, we're at 872 billion. But then between 1700 and 1820, we go from 872 to 1.63, doubles.
Wow.
And then in 1850, just 30 years later, goes from 1.63 to 2.15. And by 1920, it's 6.7 trillion. So between 1850 and 1920, it jumps 3 times. And then a century later, which is basically 2020, it's 147 trillion. That's amazing. And he quotes Marx in the Communist Manifesto, and he says, despite their distaste for the nature of capitalism, they had to admire what it had achieved. And this is Marx. It has been the first to show what man's activity can bring about. It has accomplished wonders far surpassing Egyptian pyramids, Roman aqueducts, and Gothic cathedrals. It has conducted expeditions that put in the shade all former exoduses of nations and crusades. That's Marx on capitalism.
Yeah. Well, but for Marx, capitalism was a step toward, right? It was he was what Jonah Goldberg said. He is the first neoliberal.
Yeah. It was for him. Capitalism was necessary.
Yeah. And Lenin, they'll sell us the rope we hang them with. I mean, it was. Yeah. Well, to that end, Ron, a capitalist guy that you know by the name of Elon Musk.
Yep.
On June 6th, the story is from, world's richest man, as we know, lost $33.9 billion after the public tantrum and feud with Donald Trump. $39.9 billion, right? Let's just put this into perspective. So here's some numbers. This is roughly as much as the Dallas Cowboys, Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Rams, and New York Yankees franchise are worth combined. If instead of tweeting, Musk decided to just send someone random all the money he'd end up losing on Thursday, if he just gave that away, that person would be the 55th richest person in the world. You could buy nearly 500,000 Cybertrucks. With that, Musk has shown an interest in mixed martial arts. He'd probably have more flexibility to schedule a scrap with Meta's Zuckerberg. $33.9 billion is nearly enough to account for all of the cumulative net income that Tesla has generated over its history as a publicly traded company.
Well, he's probably got the inventory of Cybertrucks, from what I understand. They're not selling. God, I watched these horrific reviews of it on Facebook postings or whatever, social media posting. Now, some people fawn over it and say how great it is, but boy, the people that don't like it, wow.
Yeah.
They really rip into it for various just basic flaws, like the edges of the doors or whatever
don't line up properly. I've heard a lot of that.
And cut you, if you run your finger through, and apparently it doesn't handle the rain or the snow very good when you go to clean it, and I don't know. Just people complain about all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
The backup camera doesn't. When it's snowing, you can't see anything. And
okay,
so anyway. Well, this is one from Jim Boomer, and he's talking about from KPIs to KBIs. Okay, interesting. Key performance indicators, we all know, utilization, realization, of course, and revenue, FTE, right, full-time equivalent, are snapshot of past performance. We have to ask whether we're measuring what matters most. Most of our KPIs are backwards looking, not why it happened or how to change it. Start tracking the behaviors that lead to those results. Key behavioral indicators is KBIs.
Okay, all right.
And he says, these measure the leading actions that contribute to desired outcomes. They focus not on output, but on the inputs. In other words, track what your people actually do to drive growth, improve client experience, develop talent, and more. So this is it's the process that you got to work on, right? To get to the result. KPIs tell you what happened, but KPIs tell you what happened, but KPIs will tell you what to do next. So he talks about traditional KPI versus potential KBI, revenue growth, number of proactive outreach calls to clients per week. Okay. Realization rate, percentage of engagements with clearly scoped fixed fee proposals. Client retention, number of value added check-ins during the year with your top 20 clients, and employee utilization, hours blocked weekly for deep work or development conversations. You see a problem here with this?
It's still the inputs and not the outcomes. At least some of them seem to be at least somewhat customer focused, though. I'll give them that.
Yes, and some of them do seem to be a theory.
Yep.
Which is really what he's groping for. He's not looking for a behavior. He's looking for a theory.
A theory that if this, then that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, proactive outreach calls to clients per week, number of, that don't cut it because it's a quantitative measure. I can game that all day.
Yeah.
You got to have a qualitative. What did you discuss? What actually is the plan as a result of this or whatever? Percentage of engagements of clearly scoped fixed fee proposals. Doesn't that kind of beg the question? How do you do a fixed fee proposal?
Yeah, and
we're doing hourly
what's
billing.
your what's your definition of clearly?
Yeah. Check-ins with the top 20 number of clients, same problem, right? Yes, I can have check. I'll give you what you measure. Even with a KBI, I'll give you the behaviors you want, but that might not lead to the result you're looking for. It's the same. I mean, I read this and it's like, no, but you're grappling for a theory.
Yeah. I mean, he just needs to state the theory, and that's what he's missing, that if we do this, we believe that this will lead to more revenue. Okay.
Or it might not. I mean, Wells Fargo had a theory too. If we create 8 accounts per customer, well, okay, that wasn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of chasing your own tail or swallowing it or something. I don't know, but
yeah. At least he's at least trying to move towards something else.
Yeah. Then hindsight.
Yeah.
And it just kind of sort of related. August Aquila has a book out called Marketing to Maximize Productivity, Profitability, and Client Retention, where he talks about top 10 KPIs to measure marketing success. So, of course, you and I are interested in KPIs. So this caught my attention. Client acquisition cost. Okay. That's good. Client retention rate. That's good.
Okay.
Lifetime value of client. That's really good.
Yep.
Lead to client conversion rate. Okay. Return on marketing investment, the revenue generated compared to marketing spend. Website traffic, engagement rates and social media, email open and click through, sales cycle length. There's a couple others. Net promoter score. Some of this requires a subscription type format. It's really hard to do client acquisition costs if you're not classifying expenses the way a subscription model tells you to do it.
Yeah.
So, just thought that was interesting. But at least people are getting off the traditional, well, not all people, realization, but we've still got a lot of thinking to do on these KPIs.
You only wrote a book explaining this 20 years ago, Ron. It's
What can you say? Oh,
well. Here's one I know you'll be interested in. This is from The Guardian, June 17th. World's largest banks pledged $869 billion toward fossil fuel firms in 2024. 2/3 of the biggest 65 banks increased financing by $162 billion from 2023 to 2024, walking back climate promises. Yeah. The report, compiled by a coalition of 8 green groups, shows that while the number being loaned to fossil fuel firms had been declining in 2021, last year it was an abrupt reversal. Scientists have been clear that no fossil fuel project can proceed if disastrous climate impacts are not avoided, with last year being the hottest on record ever and a slew of disasters driven by global heating. There you go. So
I remember we've been having stories about all the banks that pulled out of the net zero initiative and pulling out, scaling back some of their ESG portfolios and all of that. Yeah, fossil fuels are back.
Yeah. This year, banks have shown their true colors. Many have walked away from climate commitments and doubled down on financing fossil fuel expansion, even as global temperatures break records, said Lucy Pinson, director and founder of Reclaim Finance. Well, they're upset about this, Ron. They're not happy.
Bjorn Lomborg had a story about Canada and all the things that they've done to pull back on fossil fuel investments, projects, and all of that. And it still grew by, 5% or something. I mean, this is so stupid. Fossil fuels haven't moved. They haven't gone anywhere.
No.
And they're not going to go anywhere for quite a while.
Yeah. Coal has gone down, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's also because we have fracking and LNG and these other things. Yeah. 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 That's just so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Well, I think I'm done, Ed.
Really? This might be the first time ever that I still have.
You still have stuff?
I still have stuff. I'm not going to go through all of it, but there's just some interesting tidbits here that crossed me. This is according to Bloomberg. Kraft Heinz is going to remove all artificial dyes by the end of 2027. Supposedly in response, a victory for Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He said that they'll work with food producers to eliminate these synthetic food dyes. Now, most of these synthetic food dyes have been removed in other countries, for example. I don't know if you know that there's the difference in the color in the Fruit Loops in Canada, because they actually use natural coloring. I'm glad that this is a brand deciding to do this on their own and it's not regulation that is coercing this to happen. And this is perhaps the way it should be. And as more and more research comes out and says, hey, these things are either not good for us or people don't want to ingest them. I just don't want to ingest yellow number 40 or whatever, or red dye 40.
I've read conflicting things about the red dye thing is overblown versus there's something to it. I sometimes I just, after reading Marty McCarr's book, our FDA commissioner, called Blind Spots, where he talked about just all of the things doctors have gotten wrong in the last 40 years, not just food stuff, but like, the whole peanut butter allergy thing. And I don't know what to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm with you. If they tried to do this with legislation or regulation, that would be awful.
Yeah. No, I'm just okay with the other way. And then the last thing I have here, this is BBC climate reporter. The Earth could be doomed to breach the symbolic 1.5 C warming limit in as little as 3 years at the current level of carbon dioxide emissions. A stark warning from more than 60 of the world's leading climate scientists. In the most up-to-date assessments of the state of global warming, nearly 200 countries have agreed to limit global temperatures to 1.5 C over the levels of the late 1800s in a landmark agreement in 2015 with the aim of avoiding some of the worst impacts of climate change. But countries have continued to burn record amounts of coal, oil, and gas and chop down carbon-rich forests that leave international goal in peril. There you go. 3 years. 3 years. I'm going to save this one, Ron. I'm going to save this one. Right?
Yeah. Like Rush used to have the Alcor countdown clock on the end of the earth,
Yeah.
Bjorn, again, he writes so much about this, that this catastrophizing just doesn't work. It doesn't help their cause.
No.
People just, the boy cried wolf, and people go, but eventually the wolf did come. Yes, but we're nowhere near that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
You don't know until you know, Ron. The wolf could be right around the corner. Could be.
The idea that man can impact the universe that much is so much hubris. It's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
When nature does everything it can to kill us.
Right.
And succeeds in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Tornadoes, hurricanes, everything else. I mean, I just...
There we have it.
All right, Ed. Well, this guy's book next week, it's a takedown of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, specifically for companies, and I'm telling you, it's compelling. It's made me rethink. Now, this is somebody that Kimberly Josephine
recommended to us.
right?
Yeah.
Highly recommended, and greatly has influenced her work.
Right.
Now I know why. This has got some really good points. I think you're going to find this interesting.
All right. Looking forward to it.
All right. See you next week.
Catch you
I'll
next
be at
week.
Scaling next week.
That's it. Yes, you will be.
So I'm starting tomorrow, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
But you'll be
All
back for the show. So
I will be back by Friday. Yep.
all right.
Cool. All right, Ed. Take care.
All right.